What's up, guys? We're back. We have Larry, the counter guy, back with us, okay, for part two. Now, I got a couple of messages about this particular podcast saying who's Larry and all that kind of stuff. Well, he's a parts guy down in South Florida, and you can tell he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He's a little bit frustrated. And, some of the things he talks about in this episode is technicians coming to the counter and not being able to relay the proper information because they don't know it. And I can see that being a frustration of a counter person if the technician is unaware of what they're actually looking for or how to retrieve the part and not having the information. All right, I've seen it before. So I've never worked down in South Florida. I can't give you the ins and outs of what's going on. This is Larry's side of the story. And I'm all for listening to someone's side of the story and finding out what's actually going on. Maybe we could take a deeper dive into this later on. But for now, guys, this is Larry back for part two, discussing how his life behind the counter can sometimes be frustrating. Let's get to it. This is the HVAC Know It All podcast. I'm your host, Gary McCreadie. This podcast is sponsored by Cool Air Products, Master, Cintas, and SupplyHouse.com. Go to the show notes and click on the links to check these guys out.
We want top-notch communication. We want top-notch technical knowledge. We want top-notch logistics, because don't forget, we're logisticians also. If I make a special order, I become responsible for the tracking number. For some reason, there's no automation in this side of the world. Like, this is literally one of the last analog businesses. When I first started in 2006, and still today, it's the only fail-safe or protection we have, is when you buy a piece of equipment, do you see them take the serial number off of the box and attach it to the invoice? Is that pretty regularly something you see? Right.
No.
That's because you're dealing with somebody that controls their inventory well. In South Florida, and it's largely a result of, I would call it a lack of control. And I'm not going to blame anybody. It's just been this way for as long as time has existed. Oh, you can't shop there? Well, I can. Everybody's always got a friend. Jimmy Buffett used to joke, everybody's got a cousin in Miami. That was a song that he wrote, and I live that life. I've talked to everybody, their cousin and their aunt and brother, trying to get this problem, including two people last week who wanted to buy a motor. I had to tell them no, then walked in with the board. Where do I get this? This is not a do-it-yourself industry. But at the same time, it's one that really lacks professionalism at a certain level. And the things that you are fundamentally expecting, I don't think are going to happen all that often. I think that there's enough gaps in this business. There's enough failures to communicate, enough failures to double check and double check that the items being sent out that are even correct in the box. Like, I get what you're saying. Something was returned that went back on the shelf. Somebody returned a rock. Well, why didn't anybody open that box? Why when it was received, wasn't it opened and checked properly? I have to put it on a shelf. At that point, it's already too late to make a complaint about some damage that somebody in the warehouse making $12 or $15 an hour ignored, And then,
it's not just an industry problem. This is a people problem and lack of just lack of caring, a lack of accountability. Every time I go to McDonald's to get my kids something, every once in a while, they want McDonald's. I go, I bring it home, and there's something missing every single time. So now I got to get back in my car and drive back there and yell at someone because they can't get my $30 order right.
Like Uber. Uber is a failure in that regard, but it's worth billions of dollars. It kind of brings me, you raise an important point. What's the reason all of this even fuss should be raised? And it kind of occurred to me in talking with Jobber, as I have regularly, and I enjoy talking with them. They really are really thoughtful people, and they have that support there to talk about things with. But the real issue here is about the value of your company, your ability to scale, and your ability to sell. We're in a marketplace where everyone's buying, and right up the street from me, is the remains of Blockbuster. So roll-ups are the story of today. Purchases by hedge funds, all this corporate money that we keep hearing. I know half a dozen guys who've sold their company for more than $1 million, some for $3, $5, $10, or $15 million. I'll give you an example. Look at Hill York here in Fort Lauderdale, one of the first air conditioning companies in the world has now been acquired by EMCOR. If people run their businesses like they relate to the counter, there is no possible opportunity for you to grow. There is no opportunity for you to package and communicate effectively. And most importantly, you can't scale and then sell that business. And if that is what the market holds, selling, buying, selling, scaling, rebuying, it's just a big cycle. That's as business people, as pure entrepreneurs. Take it just not from the counter. What I'm saying is if you let the counter be a hindrance to your success, and you're not really going to have anyone to blame. It's really just your fault. And the counter can do that to you. It can be the make or break thing. And the best companies out there have really incredible relationships with counter folk.
Because you asked me what I expect from a counter when I call. What do counter people expect from the technician calling or walking
Great
into
question.
their
Model
store?
and serial number. I expect you to know all of the basic information that are on every one-page warranty form. Who lives there, where, and why. I don't expect you to stand there at the counter. See, this is what invites answering the phone. Is somebody gets the floor at the counter, and then they hold court. And for many people, this might be the only place where they're the king. They're going to go home, they're going to get yelled at by their customers, and yelled at by their wives, or yelled at by everybody. But here at the counter, you're king still. You got the money and a lot of it, and we're going to listen to you. But you start doing, and you don't have the answers that we've asked for 1,000 times. Worse yet, you haven't texted a picture from the job site in, you haven't emailed in, you haven't used the technology that's there. I mean, look, Carrier, you can scan the barcode and see the parts in it, and then see the stock at a location and then call that location. You don't have to call somebody to figure out what location to call. I mean, it's really just a question of, do you think that all the answers are at the end of that phone call? Because let me tell you what it does. It stops business cold dead in its tracks. You, as a count guy arriving at the counter, get upset that I'm stuck having to deal with you or people that are ill-informed or unprepared to do the transaction they're about to be engaged in. You don't go to a closing of a house and sit there and say, but so many times I'm sitting there staring at people that this is all they do. This is their job, and they don't know what they're talking about. And that creates a disaster for me. I can only teach you 1 or 2 or 3 times. I don't have time to be the teacher. I could name to you people that they're texting me, how much is a 3-ton? I mean, like, it's the same price as it was on your invoice yesterday. You don't have access to your invoice yesterday?
How often does it happen that someone walks in and does not
All the
have the
time.
correct information for you to help them? Is it
Yes.
repeatable offense? The same people doing the
Yes.
same thing over and
Now,
over and over again?
let's be fair. A lot of times, especially in South Florida, we have language issues. We speak 100 languages in South Florida.
Oh, we're a melting pot here in Toronto too. So we have a bunch of cultures here, and I mean, yeah, there is sometimes a language barrier, but there's ways to get past
We
it.
have a highly, we'll call it a Tinker-about Home Depot approach to things in South Florida. There's people that can afford to do high quality work, and you can see their homes. We see their homes. There's boat tours all around Miami that you can look at the mansions of the rich and famous, right? But you're not going to take a tour of housing developments and of just standard whatever Lennar is building this week or whatever this builder is building this week or whatever. And sometimes it's just not all that good. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just not great. And sometimes it takes somebody like you to come along and fix the new construction or to make the necessary repairs that are long ignored. And the failure to really appreciate the complexity of this by the people that are doing the work is to me is insane. Like you put me in a very difficult position as the counter person. I become a translator to the people you want to get something from. And then you're talking to me in an unclear way, and you don't even have the fundamental information. And that goes further to assume that the answer I'm relying on the person providing it is correct. What I do, here's the question which I'm going to anticipate. Let me see if I'm right. What does Larry do differently that other people don't do? When you call me and you start a conversation with me, I'm in your ticket. I'm in your account. I know if you have an account or not. I know who you are. So there's no, what's your phone number? When we're done with that conversation, a email or a text of your ticket goes to you, which codifies your time. When did you first speak with me? You now have a chain of evidence, a chain of proof that was never going to fail you, because I'm never going to fail you, because I know that that's on my calendar, my schedule, my email to do. I already know, because I'm rotating and forcing you to use technology that as a technician you just won't use for whatever reason. And I get it. Sometimes they ask for too much information or it's clunky, whatever it is. But the truth of the matter is, so much of it's available out there that when you rely on me to give you all the answers, I am essentially being a assistant technician to you. I'm not a counter guy, and that's not fair. As a matter of fact, I know people who have lost their jobs because the coke in the machine was expired. They've been fired as managers of stores. Talk about unimportant stuff. That's some serious nonsensical crap, you know? It's one thing if the
Hmm.
bathroom is full of garbage and if it's unsanitary. I clean my own bathrooms because I use them. Like the pride that you're talking about that everyone should have. I don't know if I can be sincere in saying that when you call with a problem, your problem is my problem. But the company I work for does not believe that same thing. And many times have worked for, and many times it just doesn't provide that level of care to you. Uh, Here's a great example. School Board of Miami-Dade County purchased Magic Airs. Magic Air is a pretty well-known brand name. I think it comes with a 1-year warranty when it was installed.
What is a magic air? Like an air cleat?
Uh, yeah,
Oh, it's an air handler.
10,
Okay.
20-ton air handlers, but they very specifically fit the requirements of many projects in our community. And the first thing that the project manager technician said to the person who bought it was, please don't ever buy these again. Please don't buy them. They don't work, they break, and we spend all of our time fixing them. And nobody listened. So even still today, there's people calling up trying to get information about Magic Airs. And even still today, there's counter people trying to call Magic Air and try and find out why they can't find Magic Air. And it's because it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Like just the basic fundamental knowledge of Train owns American Standard, and keep going. Name all the brands that you can get through your Train dealer and all the parts. Like, how many times do I have to answer the question of, or how is it possible that a technician doesn't know that Ream and Rude are the same parts? Like, how is that humanly possible at this point? Have you been in this business for more than 10 minutes?
Well, like let me play
Please.
devil's advocate on that, because there's lots of things like
It's a
that that I don't
conversation,
know.
Gary. I'm just trying to start a conversation so we all can save time.
Yeah, let me just play devil's advocate on that. So, I mean, I work on pretty much anything. Anything that's thrown at me in the land of commercial. One day it could be a carrier rooftop. The next day it could be in a condo building working on a Dakin air handler on the second floor of a new construction condo doing warranty repair work on a bearing, which I was doing yesterday. And then I could be in someone's little shop working on their reach-in freezer. This is so I don't specialize in one specific area of the trade. So when it comes to knowing Ream and Rudd are the same, sometimes I'm not saying I don't know that specific one, but there's things that I'm not keeping track of in my head because I'm all over the place in this industry. So I don't always know everything. For me, I rely on help buttons. Like I know people that will help me with that. I can call someone for that. I can call someone for that. So when I do call the supplier, I want them to know things like that. I agree. Me personally, I should have model and serial number. I should have, if
And
I'm
most
doing
people
a
do.
warranty,
Most
I
people
should
do.
yeah, I should, if I'm doing a warranty on something, I should have the part number and the homeowner's address and their name and all that kind of stuff for the warranty form. I get all of that stuff, but at the same time, sometimes I might rely on my counter person to look into their database of information to get things that I
100%.
just don't know or don't have information to. So we have to have a well-rounded relationship. One side needs to have the correct information, and the other side needs to have the correct information so we can get the correct solution in place.
I think that there's a fundamental disconnect here that we have yet to recognize. And I don't want to interrupt you, but it's the damn phone keeps ringing with people that have questions. Why does the phone ring? If I am involved in one of the most important transactions a human being is going to do, Gary, you are arguably involved in a business that is more essential almost than medicine. When my air conditioner breaks and it gets hot in my house, like it just did at my mother-in-law's, like I just went through 2.5 weeks of leak checking, of no air conditioning. Fortunately, it was cool enough in Florida for her to live. But people cannot live without air conditioning. They can't live without heating. Your houses degrade rapidly from accumulation of moisture and accumulation of heat. Like, I get what you're saying, that you've got all these things that you need to do. What you're not understanding necessarily is what we're being thrown at and asked to do, which is fix everything. The reason that I feel that I had a great advantage is because I did something down here in South Florida called it's the Tropic MBA. So you ask, how do you get this information? If you're in a place like Tropic Supply, as opposed to, or a Johnstone, a place that has multiple lines, that isn't just like a total line, or isn't a train, or isn't a gem air, you're going to find more rounded and diverse managers. You're going to find, and the managers are ultimately who the people are accountable to. Like if a counter person is really good at ringing people up and getting them out, that's what they should be their primary task. But when you ask me to be great at a million things, there might be one or two things I'm not particularly good at as a counter person. Not only that, I got to stand up on my feet all day. I hardly ever get to eat. I hardly ever get to take a break. I almost never get to go to the bathroom. Like, legitimately, I'm a human being. But you have failed to recognize that I'm also the interface to technology for you. I mean, you don't have failed to recognize it, but I think that's what needs to be said. I am the keyboard that types in what is where and for whom and when. And that's why we're important as counter people. Getting
Mhm.
back to you. You get that, right?
I fully respect counter people. I fully respect them because without them, it doesn't work well. And making good and I've talked about this before on posts on social media and all that stuff. Having good rapport, good relationship with your counter people will go so far because when you walk in, if there's two people standing at the counter and one guy A he's a tech A. He's a dick all the time. He's grumpy when things don't go his way at the counter. He's complaining and throwing his hands up. The other guy walks in. He's like, "Yeah, take your time, nonchalant, happy. Hey, how's your morning? How was your trip last week? All that kind of stuff." That goes a long way in the service you're going to receive on the back end.
100%.
Because if you're cordial in that way, and you seem like you care about that person and their life outside of what they do behind the counter, they're going to give you the best support they can, and they're not going to bitch about it. Where if you're going to bitch and complain, the counter person's not going to give you the response you want from them, and it could just be not a very good relationship going forward. So just treat people kindly, and that's it. It doesn't have to go much
See,
further
there's
than that.
there's this thing, and there's this thing, and I call it no. No is what people say when they don't know. If you call me and ask me a question and I don't know something, I just say, "Oh, no, that's not available. Oh, that's not in stock. Let me call the manufacturer." And then I shuffle it off to somebody else who's really going to actually do the job. And there is a complete, and this is where it becomes important to technicians and company owners, to really pay attention. When you rely to your detriment on that person behind the counter, do they have the level of investment that you're talking about, Gary? Do they know you? Do they know you? Do they care about you? Do they know what your business is and who your customers are? Like, I can tell you how many times I've had to bring a part to somebody at lunch because of a failure of the system. The truck ran late, they didn't get there, whatever it is. But it's my lunch. If I want to bring somebody a part and it's a half hour away, I'll do it. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Nobody does
mhm.
that. Nobody does it unless they're forced to. Maybe you got an outside salesman that does it or can get a truck this way. Like, I can't, if at anything, I can't stress how important it is for you to understand how much we can do for you and how much is invited upon you, the technician, while you are not participating in this game, not acknowledging that the number one, that most counter people aren't paid very well. I mean, it's an hourly job. It's the truth. You got to understand it. The managers are paid great, but everybody else is paid pretty much garbage, unless you're in a really good quality organization. And if you're not, you'll see things like down here at Gem Air where there's 2 people in a branch, unless you're at a mega branch, because the phone never rings, because they have a call center. See, listen to the things I'm saying. They all just seem to make sense, but you're not really, we are not totally grasping who we're doing business with. I know who I'm doing business with when I go to my dentist or my doctor. I can see the things, the degree on the wall. But when that person walks in across the counter, and this is a two-way relationship, because there are some people who tell you they love their counter guy and vice versa. Heck, I've been invited to weddings and funerals, more funerals than I'd like to discuss. But that being the case, that life happens as we go out our everyday thing, that I get called out because my mom is sick and I don't answer your phone call or I miss something. Like, all that's avoidable with technology. Just send an email. Create a paper trail. Create a system that is, if I am not here tomorrow, and I say this because there was a day where I almost wasn't here tomorrow when I got hit by a truck. When I was working 6 months into my new job at that technical research and development company. The company's called Northern Lights, one of the biggest generator manufacturers in the world. Northern Lights Generators. They have an air conditioning branch down here that I worked for several years. And I had an amazing, enriching, growing opportunity. But there was no pressure. Nobody cares if a yacht chiller's a day late. You know, people do care if their air conditioner isn't on. And they don't want to hear stories. And they don't want to hear nonsense. And the truth is, you can avoid all that by getting it on paper, getting a text, and having a real relationship with your counter person.